Hey students, how y'all doing? Today's devotion comes from John chapter 6. That's our reading for today. And John chapter 6 is one of my favorite passages in all of the Bible. It starts out with John's account of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And it goes on, and Jesus does some more things and throughout the chapter. And eventually he's got this massive crowd following him around. And Jesus gives them a really difficult teaching because they were demanding a sign from him. A similar sign, they mention Moses calling down manna from heaven to feed the Israelites in the Old Testament. They mention that, the crowds do, to Jesus. And they say, "What is your sign, Jesus?" And Jesus gives them this really difficult and confusing teaching and tells them that they're going to have to eat of his flesh and drink of his blood. And that was going to be the new and better manna that Moses called down from heaven. Jesus is a greater fulfillment of what the Israelites saw in the Old Testament. And it strikes me what the response was. When Jesus gives this difficult teaching, he recognizes that some of them are offended, and he goes on to explain it a little bit more. And then we're told that from that moment, that very moment when Jesus gave this teaching, many of his disciples turned back and no longer accompanied him. And I've always found that interesting because I've encountered people throughout my walk, and there's even been moments when I myself have experienced this where we come across a very difficult teaching or something the Lord is calling us to that is challenging. And the tendency for many people is to, upon hearing a difficult teaching or recognizing a difficult call in their life, for them to turn their back on Jesus and to walk away. And so I just want to ask you this morning, what is it that is really difficult for you as a follower of Jesus to come to grips with and be willing to sacrifice in order to follow Jesus better? And maybe it's something that you don't always do an excellent job of turning away from or laying aside or accepting as a teaching from God. But just meditate on that today, because our response should not be, but so often is. Our response should not be that we turn our back on Jesus and walk away. It is far better for us to accept the teaching or the call of Jesus and to continue to follow him than for us to ever turn our back on him. Hope that's an encouragement to you this morning. Love you guys, praying for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Bye.